At the Orange County Community Foundation, we believe in transforming our community's heartfelt intention into greater impact for good. By helping donors find the causes they love, we strengthen our community. We lead the way with bold solutions, combining giving strategy and community intelligence. Leveraging our generous donors and passionate partners, we amplify the power of giving. Together, we are helping to build an Orange County where all have the opportunity to thrive. OCCF is a proud underwriter of community programming and OC World. OC World is made possible by the generous contributions of the Marisla Foundation, the Keith and Judy Swain Family Foundation, Orange County Community Foundation, the University of California, Irvine, Socorro and Ernesto Vasquez Family Foundation, Crevier Family Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
He's California's top law enforcement officer, leading the charge in courtrooms, communities, and Capitol hallways. As Attorney General, Rob Bonta represents the state in civil and criminal matters, oversees sheriffs and district attorneys, launches investigations, and brings legal action to protect consumers. Increasingly, he's also taking on battles with both local cities and the federal government. In the legal arena he calls home, Bonta has positioned himself as a staunch defender of the rule of law. He says his work is guided by the Constitution, committed to fairness, due process, and justice, and in particular for immigrant and undocumented communities. He is the first Filipino American to serve as California's Attorney General. He immigrated to California with his family as an infant, and his parents were civil rights activists, and he often credits these lessons as still driving his mission in public service. But Bonta's time in office hasn't been without conflict. He now finds himself in high-stakes legal battles, suing cities over zoning laws, defending state election rules, and challenging federal decisions like the deployment of the National Guard under the Trump administration. Well, Mr. Attorney General, thank you again for joining us here on OC World.
Sure.
We're here in what they call the robing room, backstage of Brent Center at the University of California, Irvine, where you recently gave the commencement for the graduate students of the School of Social Ecology.
Now I ask you, what role can you play? None of you need to do everything, but I respectfully encourage all of you to do something that makes our shared society fairer and stronger, something that helps fix a broken part of the world, something that you are passionate about, that has personal meaning to you. If you don't have the answer today, that's all right. Now's the time to find out. The one unsolicited piece of advice I have for all of you is to stay engaged. Be it following the news, joining a peaceful protest, attending a community meeting, sharing opinions with friends and family members, neighbors, calling out injustice, or voting in every election. You have a vested interest in what happens in your community, your state, your country.
And I'm wondering, what would be the one message you would hope the students took away today from your speech?
Don't be hopeless, because you're not helpless. They have agency to change their world, and we're relying on them to do it, to participate in our democracy, which thrives on engagement and participation and activism, and to not be apathetic or neglectful. And these students are built for it. They chose social ecology because they want to make their world better, more fair, more just. They want to change it. And I wanted to reinforce that message that though some people say they're the leaders of tomorrow, they're also the leaders of today. They can make change now. And I wanted to instill them with that confidence and cheer them on and applaud them as they go out into the quote unquote real world to make a difference that's needed more now than ever.
You're the first Filipino American to be elected to the office of Attorney General. And I read that your parents had a big influence in you in terms of just your position on social justice, civil rights, etc. And I'm wondering what would your parents advise you today, considering the sort of current environment that we find ourselves in the country and in the state of California?
And I think they're very proud of what I'm doing. I know my mom is. I lost my father, so he's not with us now, but he's followed my career in public service, and they have liked the fact and encouraged me to be aggressive in my pursuit of justice and fairness and change, that it brings us to places that we need to go to refuse to accept the unacceptable, to never normalize what's so abnormal. And I know my mom knows and my dad would know this is a very unique moment that requires people to stand up and push back and show courage. And they were everyday people who were involved in extraordinary movements. My dad, involved in the civil rights movement, marched and organized for voting rights and civil rights in Selma, Alabama. Both parents involved in the United Farm Workers of America movement. We lived in the headquarters of La Paz. And then my mom, an immigrant from the Philippines who came to California and America for the first time when she was 28 years old, organized for the restoration of democracy in her home country after it was taken away by a dictator. And they moved me here to California, brought me here when I was 2 months because they wanted to flee martial law and the end of democracy, the rise of a dictator. They wanted me to have due process and human rights and the rule of law and democracy and freedom. So they know you have to fight for the things that you want. You just can't put your chin on your elbow, look out the window and hope for it. And I've been very active. I've been very aggressive, unapologetic, resolute, immovable in my commitment to the rule of law, the Constitution being complied with, including, yes, from the President of the United States. So I think my dad would be pleased with the approach that I've taken. And I know my mom is, because I saw her yesterday. And she's very proud of me. I know she worries about me, but she's proud of me. And this is a moment for courage, for people to stand up and fight, and we're doing just that.
When you stand up and fight and you reflect on your family history, what sort of emotional connection do you have to that relationship? What is it that you're currently going through in terms of your stress level in the current environment?
You know, we're all a byproduct of and shaped by our lived experiences. I'm no exception, and my family's legacy is such a critical part of who I am, part of my identity. I think often about my dad being a grad student in Berkeley and feeling called to action to go to Selma, Alabama, and being on the ground, fighting for a more just and fair nation, trying to bring us closer to being that more perfect union. I think about my parents who stopped everything and went to the headquarters of the UFW movement in La Paz, where there was Cesar and Dolores and Philip Vera Cruz and others. And they didn't know. We know now what the story was. We know now the story of the civil rights movement as well. But at that time, I'm sure it seemed like the odds were against them, that it was an uphill battle. They were fighting the status quo. They were fighting the people with power and authority. They were just everyday people without any positional power or authority. And then my mom, like literally protesting with me with signs and slogans in Sacramento about a dictatorship an ocean away. I think about that all the time. And one of the reasons I ran for office is because I saw my parents, as everyday people, ask those in power, those who are in office, those who are elected officials, to side with them and fight with them and see the issues that they saw and help them. And most of the time, I also remember the disappointment on my parents' faces when those people said no, when they were focused on other things. And I ran for office so I could say yes to the people, say yes to the request for someone with positional authority who's supposed to represent the people, to fight with them and help them and lift them up and make their challenges, their fights, my fights, and to fight alongside them and have their back and be by their side. So I think about that all the time. And I also think about how my parents had a dream for me to live with freedom and democracy and the rule of law and due process and human rights. And they brought me here because it was being taken away there in the Philippines. And now I'm here in California, and we're fighting for some of those things again. Every generation needs to fight to make sure that our democracy remains intact and remains strong, that rights and freedoms aren't stripped away, that the rule of law prevails, that due process is given to people. And so we're fighting for that now. I didn't expect us to be fighting against our federal government on some of these things, but if fight we must, then fight we will, and we are. And so, but it's always with a lot of perspective, inspiration from my parents and their movements. You know, I'm the Attorney General of California. They were everyday people fighting these fights, and so I have a vast amount of authority and positional power that I can use, I can deploy to help people who need it, who don't have it. And that's what I always try to do. Remember the people who are vulnerable, who have been forgotten, cast over, who've been abused by those in power, and help them, lift them up, make their fights my fights. And you know, I'm feeling great. I got a full tank of gas, a ton of energy. I'm ready to go. I'm inspired because I have an ability to change things, and I want to use it.
Great change can begin with the individual, don't you believe?
100%.
Yeah, and that sounded like perhaps one of the messages you conveyed to the graduating students here today.
Yes. And I wanted them to understand the power that they have. And as a young person graduating, going out into the world where adults and other people, quote unquote, are making decisions about their lives and their future, they might not think that. But I wanted to remind them of that. And I was very, clear with examples about Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez, or excuse me, and Martin Luther King Jr. And Malala Yousafzai, and people who were young but had a passion, saw an injustice, confronted it, did something about it, changed the world in the process. They can do that too. So yes, individuals have a lot of power, and I wanted to remind them of that fact.
I'm here to call you to action. It's my sincerest hope that each of you will answer in your own way. UC Irvine gave you the skills, curiosity, and willingness to question and challenge the status quo. Use them. Across the nation, our rights, freedoms, and safety are under attack. Our diverse communities, our people are under attack. Now is not the time for silence or blind compliance. The stakes are too high. Everyone has a role to play in shaping the world we all deserve to live in.
Legal challenges and lawsuits. There's a lot of anxiety out there in our country today. People filled with rage in many respects. Here in California, violent crimes, homelessness, affordable housing, ID laws, voter ID laws, immigration reform, cuts in federal funding, etc. The National Guard being deployed by the Trump administration. What role does the rule of law play here? And in particular, with your, what I heard, 26 lawsuits currently against the federal government.
Yeah, it's the through line through all those things. Upholding the rule of law, making sure that the Constitution is being complied with. That's our North Star. That's why and if we go to court. We don't go to court to play politics. We don't go to court if all we have is ideological or policy difference. We don't go to court with just political grievance and nothing more. Those things, you get thrown out of court if that's what you have. If you bring the receipts, if you bring proof that the law has been broken and your factual presentation and your legal analysis support that, a judge will side with you. And judges have sided with us almost every time. They've issued temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions against the president, who has been, I hate to say it, but he's been a repeat offender when it comes to breaking the law. He keeps breaking the law and doing it in the same ways. He keeps trying to, they call it impounding funding. He tries to take the power of the purse away from Congress and exercise it himself. It's not his authority, it's Congress's authority for how money is spent and appropriated. He's tried to rewrite the Constitution with the stroke of a pen on day one when he tried to get rid of birthright citizenship. Right there in the Citizenship Clause in the 14th Amendment, if you're born on American soil, you're a U.S. citizen, period, full stop. If one wants to change it, there's a process for that. It's not an executive order. It's getting 2/3 of both houses to vote for the change and then having 3/4 of the states ratify it. That's how you have a constitutional amendment. But the rule of law is the defining factor for everything that we do. We are upholding the rule of law and making sure that the president follows it, and we're, with all of our public safety work that we do, tackling fentanyl, tackling human trafficking, hate crimes, organized retail crime. That's about the rule of law. Consumer protections, when greedy corporations take advantage of everyday people. That's making sure that the law is not broken by those with power. In that case, the corporations, making sure people have access to health care, making sure that common sense gun laws are being followed, making sure that the right to reproductive freedom is given as it's so strongly provided for here in California. Everything we do is about the rule of law.
It's interesting to me, the rule of law. I mean, sometimes, the wheels move slowly in gaining justice, right? And I'm wondering, one, if, California has the patience and the discipline to sit through potentially months and years of, the process to go through. And what happens if you go through the legal process and somebody decides not to play by the rule of law?
Well, I'll say that there's this general view that litigation goes slowly, and it can, but it can also go very quickly. Like when we got a court order on Thursday that said that the president's decision to deploy the National Guard to LA was unlawful and unconstitutional. He had just deployed them a few days before. We secured an order and went to court. We went to court and secured an order just within days. There have been other cases where we've gotten decisions from courts in hours. So it moves very quickly when you're seeking a restraining order or a preliminary injunction, especially when it's so clear that the unlawfulness is present. So, but it will play out over time. Usually we secure an order and then the government continues to press their case and appeal and try to justify their unlawfulness or their unconstitutional behavior. That might take time, but the order is already in place, stopping the unlawful conduct. What do we do if the president decides he's not going to follow a court order? Well, that would be another unlawful action and an escalation. We follow court orders in the United States of America. It's part and parcel of our legal process. He has said that if he gets a court order that he doesn't agree with, he'll appeal. That's the way to do it. Appeal, make your case. And if you lose again on the appeal, then you have to continue to follow the court order. There should be no time where there's a clear court order ordering the president or his administration to do something and they recognize and understand what they're supposed to do and they say no. That will be completely unconstitutional, unlawful, un-American, and absolutely not something I think the people of this country want or are willing to accept.
Do people have a legitimate concern for that potential?
Yeah, I think you have to look downfield and see what's possible. It hasn't happened yet, in my opinion, and some of the indications are not good. What you hear about from J.D. Vance in his tweets about courts don't tell generals how to run their army, or Speaker Johnson saying courts should stand down, or even Trump calling judges so-called judges when he doesn't like their decisions, or calling for their impeachment, trying to discredit them, calling them activist judges. Like, you should accept what courts say. We do. We follow court orders, even if we think we're right and the order is wrong. We follow it because that's how our legal system works, and that's what we must do here in the United States of America. So I think the fear is legitimate. People need to be vigilant about what happens next and be cognizant of what the president might do, but he hasn't done it yet.
How do you see the role of your office in safeguarding California's diverse communities from policies that may disproportionately affect some of the marginalized groups?
It's been very disappointing to see some of the targeting and attacks coming from this federal administration on some of California's beautifully diverse communities, including attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that bring justice closer to more people. And diversity, equity, and inclusion programs include things like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Americans with Disabilities Act, some of our core civil rights laws that have brought our democracy closer to more people, made it more inclusive, brought those diverse communities into the democratic fold, made it more equitable in the process. So those attacks are really difficult to see. Attacks on our immigrant communities, very, very deliberate. And I have to point out the clear hypocrisy between what Trump has said he would do by saying that he was going to go after violent, undocumented immigrants. And now, on day one, he went after children, U.S. citizens with birthright citizenship. He went after a 9-month pregnant woman, deported a 2-year-old U.S. citizen, going to churches, going to schools, going to courts to enforce immigration law, going after people who are lawfully present with student visas. And so we can't not see the incredible hypocrisy, the salesmanship and the lies that he puts out there, and then what he actually does. We have to look at what he's actually doing, not what he says he's doing, not what he's gaslighting, trying to gaslight us about. So that's been hard to see as well. And he's also gone after the LGBTQ plus community, including veterans and athletes and students who are transgender Americans. And it seems like cruelty is the point for some of his targeting of different communities. And all of these communities have rights. They have civil rights. They have constitutional rights. They have protections that they are afforded as people living in this country. They have due process. And so the rule of law is part of ensuring that all of those rights are given to them and that they're not violated. And if they're violated, that they're vindicated in a court of law. So the rule of law, again, shows up when it comes to the targeting by the president of some of our diverse communities here in California.
Your office isn't opposed to the Trump administration targeting undocumented people who have committed violent crimes, though, correct?
Absolutely. We are not opposed to that. And let me be clear, everyone and anyone who commits a crime should be held accountable for committing that crime, documented or undocumented. And if Trump actually did what his promise was, going after violent, undocumented immigrants, we have no problem with that. It's not what he's doing, as I just mentioned. And also consistent with the rule of law, that the federal administration may enforce immigration laws lawfully. And we won't obstruct or interfere with that. I have a different policy perspective. I think that there's a lot of hardworking, tax-paying, good people here who are not lawfully present, who deserve a pathway to be lawfully present, to be a citizen, or to get a visa, or to get another status that's lawful, to present themselves for consideration through a process and then be granted that consideration if they meet all the requirements. I think that's completely appropriate. And many of these folks never violated any state criminal law, haven't committed any crimes when it comes to state law. So, but that's a failure of the Congress to have comprehensive immigration reform. So I still want that. But in the meantime, if you're not lawfully present, the federal administration may enforce immigration laws and take steps that are lawful.
So this is a side question, but it seems to feel relevant to my world, and that is OC World is a nonprofit media company. It's a very unusual model where we're not funded by advertisers. We're funded by the community. How do you see the media in terms of fanning the flames of discontent, or are they serving a vital role?
Members of the media that are truth seekers and truth tellers are absolutely critical to the continued vibrancy of our democracy. It's to seek truth, to tell the truth, to identify hypocrisy, to ask tough questions, to be in the press briefing room and to be present, to tell their stories independently without any bullying. Those who participate in 24-hour propaganda campaigns that portray themselves and hold themselves out as news but aren't news, that's not helpful. Misinformation and disinformation is not good for democracy. Truth-seeking and truth-telling is.
Why would you suppose many Californians sort of feel overwhelmed sometimes with the conflict among leadership? And what hope might you provide them for a more peaceful and promising tomorrow?
You know, I think hardworking, everyday Californians and Americans, they want their leaders to work together. They want their leaders to fight the problems that are in their lives, not fight with each other. And they see them fighting with each other a lot. And the rhetoric has gotten out of control. It's so toxic. The willingness to go to violence, which is never acceptable. Political violence is always unacceptable. And we saw a senator and a speaker in Minnesota and their spouses get shot. 2 of them were murdered. And that is not who we are. That is not who we can be. We must be able to deliberate thoughtfully and have dialogue and communication to solve our problems, to hear different perspectives and deliver solutions. Public service and public servants, those in elected office, are the only thing we should be judged on is, are we making people's lives better? Are we delivering? And we need to work together to do that. But unfortunately, it's become a very toxic environment, and people are right to be upset with that and to just want results instead of fighting among politicians.
So what hope can you provide the residents of California for a more promising future, and in particular the graduating students here at UCLA?
Yeah. You know, one, I'll say to all the Californians that are graduating, it's great to be in California. We are far from perfect, but we are the fourth largest economy in the world. We have nearly 40 million people. We are the most diverse state in the nation. We have learned to live and thrive with diversity. And we lift up all people in our state and believe everyone should have access to the California dream. So in California, people will continue to have elected leaders that fight for them, that reflect their values, that will commit to progress. And for me, I will commit to making sure everyone follows the rule of law, follows the Constitution. Those are bedrock principles. And if someone is not following the law or the Constitution, even if it's repeatedly, we will every time make sure that people come back into the lawful sphere where as participants in our public service sphere and in our democracy, including the president. But I'll say this to your point. I want to work with this federal administration on anything that we can work on. And we want to work on tackling fentanyl and human trafficking and organized retail crime and hate crimes. We want to address homelessness. We want to increase public safety. We want to make our schools strong. We want to make healthcare accessible and high quality. We want to take real climate action so that our kids have a planet for tomorrow and our grandkids have one. If they want to work with us on any of those things, we're open. We are game. We're not going to fight with them just to fight with them, but we will be unapologetic and immovable when it comes to following the law and following the U.S. Constitution. We expect it of ourselves. We expect it of them. We expect it of everyone who participates in our democracy. So we're going to hold firm on that, but we'll work together to advance the interests and the quality of life for all Californians.